Next week, a committee of state lawmakers is expected to recommend changes to Indiana's casino industry. Faced with growing competition over the past 2 years, the state has seen a steady decline in revenue from its 10 casinos, including the 5 licenses in northwest Indiana. To talk about what they might recommend, we have Tom Dermody, who is the Republican from LaPorte, who chairs the Summer Study Committee. Tom, welcome to the show.
Steve, great to be here.
So right now, is there any, 2 years of revenue declines here among Indiana's casinos, is there any light at the end of the tunnel in your mind?
Well, I believe so. I think the Summer Study Committee has really taken an open look to say, okay, whether you like gaming, whether you don't, we do need it as a resource. We like the revenue dollars that come locally, and it can't continue to be ignored.
Can't continue to be ignored, but is there any sort of consensus among, there are 10 different licenses out there. I don't really see a lot of consensus coming from, let's say, Hammond and Gary, East Chicago, and Michigan City.
Nor will we ever have that. I think every facility's looking for what's best for themselves, but I think they have participated. I've included them in all the discussions, and I think we will be able to, in the end, come up with some recommendations that hopefully will be more than a Band-Aid that some facilities may not like and others will, but we're looking at it from the 20,000-foot level to say, hey, we're not trying to help every facility, but try to do what's best for the industry.
So what is the, well, yeah, there you go. So bottom line, what are you looking for? Are you looking for trying to save jobs, or are you trying to shore up the amount of money that the state of Indiana gets from casinos? What's the goal here? Well,
I think it is to make the industry, what we've been targeted with is to make the industry more competitive. And as we look at that, we've had the deep discussion about land-based. We've had discussion about live dealers at the racinos. We've had the admission tax and the free play deduction. And those 4 items, especially the land-based and the racino live dealers, is a situation where that's going to help certain people and help the industry, but also hurt individual locations and make it more difficult on them.
The riverboats that have all these live games right now, they don't want to see competition from horse tracks.
Correct. But, we've already had competition, and I think it's, when you go to the racinos and see, is this a computer dealer versus a live dealer, and we can create those jobs and develop the economy in those areas and for the state, I think it's silly to not consider that.
You mentioned the admissions tax. A lot of local communities up here, they use that tax. A lot of roads get paved around here. Casinos want to get rid of that tax or somehow change it. It's a vestige from like the early days of casinos when they actually you got on a boat and it went out into Lake Michigan and came back. Now people are getting on and off the boat, pretty consistently.
Well, and again, remember, the gaming facilities themselves were the ones that chose to say, hey, we don't want to charge the admission tax anymore. And so I've heard from many local leadership, from councils and so forth, that say, hey, it's silly to make them do the admission tax, but don't hurt us. And so that's a nice position to be in. But the state, if revenues are going to continue to decline, I don't think can backfill all those dollars locally statewide.
One thing that's been big up here is the notion of whether or not we'll see land-based gaming in Gary. And I know Majestic Star, their CEO testified before your committee saying that we're not trying to locate along the Borman or I-65 anymore. We just want to locate, on land right next to where we are in Buffington Harbor. Does that seem like that's something that's going to be possible this time around?
Well, it's been great discussion, and from my perspective, the Majestic Star, to see them blocking the harbor, blocking economic development, I'm not sure if it makes much sense versus just allowing them to move onto their footprint to freeing up that area, freeing up the harbor for what everybody wants us to do, and that's help make an environment to create jobs.
Okay, but you still have casinos like Horseshoe and Hammond who are saying, hey, all right, we're not land-based, but we look a lot like land-based right now, and we've invested a lot. We've invested in the venue. Are you going to be able to work? Do you see it as your job to try to work out an agreement between those?
I'm not sure we can work out agreements versus doing what's best for the industry, and hopefully maybe if there's some amenities that can be created for them that allow them to be more competitive, we want to provide to do that. But as I said earlier, it's going to be difficult with whatever recommendations, if any, if we come away with. Some will be hurt, some won't like them, others will.
Well, speaking of someone I suppose you don't want to see hurt, the governor has taken a position that he doesn't want to see any expansion of casino gaming. putting a casino on land and making a bigger casino, that could be considered expansion of casino gaming.
Well, I'm not sure it's an expansion. I do look forward. I have a lot of respect for the governor and look forward to working with him in the next session. But I'm not sure. To me, an expansion would be if the boat was still there on the water and then adding a facility. To me, that's expansion. But I think when the boat is in need of being replaced, does it really make sense to put it back on the water or allow them to construct and create those short-term construction jobs on land while allowing them the facility to be more competitive?
A couple of years ago, there was a summer study committee, much like this one, went through, looked at all the issues, and recommended land-based gaming in Gary. The proposal really didn't go anywhere. How is this going to be any different if you make that recommendation again next week?
Well, I don't think there's any guarantee that it'll be different other than if this is something we believe in from a public policy perspective, we have to generate momentum. I think it's a much different economic scenario this time around, that it is more desperate than it was a couple years ago. So hopefully that will allow individuals that even may not support gaming to say, hey, we need to take a look at it because we do enjoy the revenues that come home.
Now, when it comes to gaming, you're seeing your revenues drop. In the end, is there anything you can really do about it if what you're competing against is not even a casino anymore in Illinois, but video poker at all of the bars? It's just a lot easier to gamble if you want to get to a slot machine than it was, just a couple years ago.
Absolutely, and I don't think we'll ever see revenues return to where they once were, but I do believe if we do not do anything, we're going to continue to watch them drop. And I think this will at least allow them to be more competitive with all the changing environments. And at some point, we're going to have to look at the new technologies, the new way people are gaming to get the young people engaged if that's what the state or these facilities want to do.
Is there a danger that does that include cutting their taxes? And if they cut their taxes, couldn't the state just end up losing just that much more money?
Well, I guess the question is, do we do nothing and lose, what is the cost of not doing anything and watching revenues to decline, jobs to be removed, or maybe giving something that won't allow them to drop that much? So it might be a net win for the state, but it's something that we have to work on along with the fiscal bodies in the State House and together hopefully come up something in the next session.
And what are you hearing? Are you talking to other lawmakers, the heads of the House Ways and Means and to get a sense of whether or not they want to see a new casino deal?
People are very open to talking about the revenues and seeing what we can come up with. Right now, they're excited to see whatever recommendations can be out there, and then we'll move forward from there. But I think this is a session that at least we'll not ignore.
The last time there were one of these committees, since then we've seen revenues drop pretty precipitously. If nothing is done, what's your prediction for the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I would say that revenues, it'll be tough for Indiana to compete with the gaming facilities there, with what's happening and with the potential of Kentucky adding on. It's not ending. And we've seen, as you mentioned, the video gaming devices in Illinois. That's going to be difficult and continue. And then, if you throw in that the tribal facilities looking to come to South Bend to really oversaturate the market, that's going to make it extremely difficult for Indiana-based facilities to compete.
You think there really is a prospect of seeing tribal gaming in Indiana, maybe in a place like South Bend?
Well, I think it's on the radar there, depending on the time frame of when it could happen is the question. But I think we'd all be foolish in believing that eventually that won't happen in that area.
All right. Tom Dermody, Republican from LaPorte, chairman of the Summer Study Committee, which is going to meet next Thursday to talk about this very issue and try to come to some sort of consensus. Thank you so much for being on.
Steve, great to be here. I'm sure we'll talk soon after next Thursday.